Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back. Today we are here to discuss House of the Dragon episode 5, and I thank every single one of you who were so patient just waiting for me to get back from my vacation within a vacation to Prague if you had seen my last video. And so as I promised, I was going to do a review for episode 5. I've been waiting this long. I've been avoiding as many spoilers as possible. Thank goodness I did. I avoided a lot of spoilers, and I was just mainly so excited to watch this episode because I was like, I know it is a wedding episode. I know it's gonna be crazy and all over the place. And so this one got me. It really got me, and there's a lot that I want to discuss for this episode. So first of all, yeah, like I said, we're building up to this wedding. Most of the episode was kind of, I guess, what I call planting the seeds for, some of these big things to blow up, or maybe, once we get to the time jump. And the thing that I want to talk about most of all first was the relationship with Cole and Rhaenyra, because that one was just kind of interesting to me. And I think it was more so because it's an interesting look into, I don't want to be like Freud and be like, it's an interesting look into Rhaenyra's psyche, but in a way it is because of the decision that she makes in regards to Cole. So basically, the whole thing is, Rhaenyra is getting married off to Lennar. Literally every time I say these names, they just don't sound right, but she's getting married, right? And so we know that she's kind of accepted this. We know that she's like, okay, even though in the beginning Viserys was being kind to her, right? He extended her the gratitude to marry whoever she wanted, and then she was kind of like, no, I don't want to marry anybody. And so now we see she's kind of changed slightly in the way that she does accept her marriage to Lennar, but she's also kind of like, hey, I know you know me, we don't really want to do this thing for real, so let's just, do what honor and duty calls us to do, and then we can just pretend like none of it happened. So then comes this whole thing, right, where she's on the ship and she's with Sir Cole, and he goes and proposes. He's like, you know what, why don't we just forget about all this and we can run away and go get married and pick fruits and berries and stuff like that. And she breaks his poor little heart because she's like, no, actually, I think I am gonna get married, but here's the consolation prize. You can still be my side. I felt so bad for him because he's so kind, and he put everything on the line for her, and then she goes and tells him and treats him like this. So you see that there is a little bit of, I wouldn't say, I mean to a degree, snakiness, but it's giving Slytherin vibes. She's like, hey, it's good news for both of us, right? And he's like, wrong. So with that instance particularly, I was like, who do I put the blame on, right? Like, was it Sir Criston for thinking, that he could have something going with Rhaenyra despite her being the heir, or was it Rhaenyra for turning him down so harshly? And honestly, I do think that Cole was onto something, because at the end of the day, Rhaenyra was making it very clear that she has no regard for tradition and the crown, almost more so than her father. So I don't think he was necessarily, out of pocket for suggesting that. And I feel quite bad for him. So good thing, he was saved from, taking the old dagger straight to the artery. But well, I'm interested to see where this goes with him later. So anyway, yeah, at the end of the day, Rhaenyra was like, listen, I am gonna marry Lennar. It is what it is, and that was quite interesting to me as well. Number one, they're cousins, and I was like, yes, how are you doing, cousin? Yes, that's still a thing. Good old Targaryens, Valyrians, and all that good stuff. But what got me for a minute was, for a hot minute, I forgot that his character was supposed to be gay. Now, of course, like I said, I'm watching this fresh. I don't know everything about the lore and Fire and Blood, but I swear, Dan Selke, my good friend and old colleague who I did the podcast Take the Black Alive with, he literally told me over and over again what the story of House of the Dragon was. I forgot every time, but I do remember him particularly telling me about Rhaenyra marrying a man who is gay, and then that doesn't kind of work out, obviously, for obvious reasons. So I do remember that much. It was all coming back to me, and thank you, Dan, for telling me some of the lore in advance just to kind of prime me. So that was still interesting to me, because now I'm like, okay, we're dealing with this complex dynamic of two people who really don't want to get married to one another. And then all that gets extremely soured by the end of the wedding anyway, right? Because of Sir Cole. And I'm like, we may as well just talk about the wedding, right? By the way, does this wedding have a nickname? I mean, we've got Red Wedding, we've got Purple Wedding. Alicent came in wearing green, which is kind of her, as they explained it, her house's call to battle colors, basically. Like, this means war. So is this green wedding versus black, or I don't know what I forget what the other colors were. Sorry to Dan, who explained this to me 5,000 times. So does this, for all you who know the lore, does this wedding have a name? Technically it was just the wedding party. They didn't even make it to the wedding, which is so funny to me. Which, as we saw, right, we had this whole thing where Laenor's boyfriend, I guess there's no other way to put it, his boyfriend basically found out that Sir Cole was kind of the guy to rendezvous with Rhaenyra, and he told that to Laenor, and he was like, hey, she knows your secret and now you know her secret, so that's kind of like, you know, that's collateral. And we all know collateral is the biggest currency in Game of Thrones. But the mistake that Joffrey, you know, his boyfriend's name, that Joffrey at a wedding, the mistake that he made was kind of parading that knowledge and telling Sir Cole that he has this blackmail information on him. And in most cases, you're fine when you tell someone you've got blackmail material on them, because now you can hold that against them, obviously, and they know consciously about that, kind of in the same way that Alicent knows about Sir Criston as well. But when you're a knight who is unmatched, that might not be the person you want to tell. So of course, as we know, as the night goes on, Criston kind of boils over and just goes to town, beating up poor Joffrey, and, you know, ends up being the big death at the wedding. By the way, only one death at a wedding. Come on, what is this? But obviously that sours things, as I might have mentioned, for Rhaenyra and Laenor, because it's like, hey, your guy killed the guy that I love. So that, I can only imagine, is going to be causing some big time problems. And if it doesn't, that is also going to be quite interesting if they just happen to move on from that. I don't think they will. So I would like to see how that relationship between our heir and her new husband develops down the line. Then another thing that I found kind of funny, or first confusing, was the fact that they kind of immediately got married after at first. Because Viserys was, you know, talking about like, today is the feast, and we're gonna have some tournaments, we're gonna have some fun stuff going on, you know, lots of activities, and then we'll have the wedding at the end of the week. And then you see everyone moments later all bloodied and bruised and hair ruffled and all that stuff. Like, I was like, so did we skip ahead 7 days to the wedding? Are they still wearing the same thing from 7 days ago, or is the wedding happening? Yeah, the wedding was happening moments after that. And that one I did go on Reddit and I kind of read, because I was like, what is going on here? And, you know, some people were just hypothesizing, and I agree with this, that when it came down to King Viserys, he was like, we need to, after all the tomfoolery that went down in just this moment and, you know, the past couple of months, we just need to cut to the chase right now and get Rhaenyra married. And I mean, why wouldn't he? Because if you think about it, especially with Daemon, how he strutted in there like he owned the place, probably uninvited. No, he's probably invited. Or was he? No, he had a seat at the table. Anyway, how he goes in there, goes to the dance floor, locks eyes with Rhaenyra, super sussy, by the way, and Viserys is like, what am I watching? I also understand now. I would have expedited the wedding as well, because who knows what mischief Daemon would have caused if things were to go his way. So in a way, we're kind of lucky that Sir Criston Cole went straight up Insano style on Joffrey, because otherwise maybe Daemon would have done something. But as I say that, I'm also like, no, I don't think there are any winners when it comes to House of the Dragon. Any scenario is probably a losing scenario. So we got what we got, and that's how it is. Speaking of no winners, or maybe winner, who knows? I don't, you might know. Then we have Alicent, right? I haven't even talked about her fully yet. And a lot of things are going on with Alicent. You can see she is not really at all content with her life. You know, she's got these noisy kids to take care of. Her father just got kicked out. He's no longer the hand. He's just been replaced. And then there's this whole thing about the new Hand of the King's son sees her in the courtyard and, just stirs up. So, hey, did you hear about the tea that Rhaenyra took? Talk about spilling the tea. And this was a kind of groundbreaking revelation for Alicent to kind of become privy to, because we see that she did trust Rhaenyra. She was talking to her father. She was like, I believe her. I don't believe your informant. That person was not telling the truth. And so for once I was finally like, okay, I get it. Alicent actually is for real team Rhaenyra, except for now her trust has been broken. I think that's really big, and we can tell this is going to be a really big turning point, especially in the way that she shows up to Rhaenyra's wedding. That Alicent learns that, well, she technically did good with David, but she did good with Kristen, and so that was still really a big breach of trust, because Rhaenyra lied to Alicent about the whole thing that happened, or maybe she lied by omission. Who cares? But Alicent was pretty heartbroken by that, and so we can kind of see, okay, the tides are really, really turning now, and things are about to heat up between these two factions, especially because Otto's kind of last words to his daughter were like, hey, you need to push for Aegon to be king, because if you let Rhaenyra sent to the throne, she might not treat you so well. She might push your family out and it's going to be game over, man. So I think those words, especially with all this having been built up now, finally got to Alicent. And as we know, we're going to have this time skip in the next episode, and I can only imagine how things are going to escalate from there. But it is interesting, though, that Viserys is still sticking to his word. No matter how many fingers he loses, no matter how many leeches get put on him, he still is in agreement that he wants Rhaenyra to be his heir. And he created the terms with Corlys that, hey, when our kids come together and when they have a child, he's like, regardless of what gender it is, then that child will ascend to the throne and he can have your name, and then that child will become king or queen, and then they can take the Targaryen name, and it's all gonna be good, right? If only it could be that way. Whew, so then all that takes us to episode 6, which will push us over the halfway mark through this season, 10 episodes. And if you saw the preview for next week, we know we are finally going into adult Rhaenyra and Alicent, which to me it's kind of sad, because I did like Millie Alcock and Emily Carey as their respective characters. It's the young versions. They did so tremendously well. I hate to see it get cut off this early, just halfway through the season, knowing that there's going to be a season 2, and I don't think there's going to be any flashbacks. Maybe, who knows, they can bring them back, but they did a tremendous job. And I'm like, apparently, this is only just the setup. They took this long just to get to the setup of the real action, of the real meat of the drama. So I'm interested to see where they go with this. Particularly, we see, like, in this episode preview that Aegon is grown up, the little ones are growing up now. We see some interaction between Lady Laena and Daemon. Oh no, who knows where that goes? I don't want to know, but I guess I have to watch it anyway. And then of course we begin to see that Viserys is growing more feeble by the minute, which I'm kind of like, why have they made him look like literally every single episode it looks like he's on the verge of death, and then it's like, now he's gonna live a little bit longer. So I don't know necessarily why they made him look so sickly, as if he's just gonna die any minute now. I guess that adds to the whole drama of it all, but I might have kind of delayed how sickly he looks. Who knows? I don't know. And then of course, like I mentioned, we see adult Alicent and adult Rhaenyra sitting at the table with the king and just looking as catty as ever at one another. So, I've been talking so long, I'm like, where am I even going with this? But I think as I wrap things up, I'm like, for next week, I am just excited to see how this time jump will kind of accelerate things, how these relationships will develop after this pivotal moment at the wedding party, because basically it's like that was the moment where everything changes for real. And what are these relationships going to look like next, with Laena and Rhaenyra and her father, her and Aegon, and there's just so many jumbles, and add Daemon into it, and it's just a whole messy, dramatic pot of stew, and I absolutely love it. I think they've really been killing this show, and for sure this episode was late, but my review for next week, I should have no excuse for having a late review. So it should be on time. We can talk about it as soon as possible. I'm really looking forward to it. So I just want to say thanks again for sticking around with me, especially being late, being on vacation, running around. But I'm just so happy to talk about this with you and to hear your comments. So please do leave a like and let me know what you thought about this episode. If I ask some questions, let me know the answers, especially when it comes to the lore, because again, sometimes I do know and then sometimes I don't know. So it's always awesome to kind of hear from you guys what's going on behind the scenes. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to be alerted when my next video comes out. Hit the bell icon, as they say, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.